This piece is very beginner friendly. There's a interesting rhythmic displacement that happens here with this dotted 8th, 16th note pattern here. The 16th note is going to happen right in between these two 8th notes here. And that displacement is really good for practicing some coordination between the hands. You could practice that by counting out loud 1 and 2 and 1. Or if you need to add in the 16th note subdivisions, do that 1E and 2E and 1. So just remember that this happens on the of beat 2, 2E and So that just locks into place 2E and 1. 2E and 1. And that kind of rhythmic displacement happens a few times in the first phrase and again in the second phrase. This piece is really great for developing balance between the hands. We have this current of 8th notes happening, but we don't want that to become loud, so the right hand needs to be louder than the left hand. So this is a great opportunity to practice that kind of balance. There's a simple pattern that happens in the left hand. It's simple, but it's not too boring because it doesn't repeat too much. It keeps it from feeling very childish because there's a little bit of variety in that left hand pattern. I really love the minor section that happens in the middle, starting in measure 29. If you stick around, I'll show you some things that we can do to improvise with that minor section, and with the last piece, the last line of the song also has this really fun way to improvise with it. I like to take little ideas from a piece like this and use it as a starting place for my own improvising. It's just a fun way to add in repetition and creative practice as you work on a piece. This is a mostly 5-finger position piece. There are just a couple of instances where you have to spread your hand out just a little bit. There's just a couple of places where you have to lift and land with your hand. There are just a few measures where you need to play dyads, which is just playing 2 notes at the same time in the same hand. And there's just one instance where the melody trades to the other hand, which can be a little tricky for beginner players. So I'm giving this a difficulty score of just 7, which is pretty easy. It's my own method I invented for ranking and gradating pieces like this. Usually the pieces that I teach are somewhere between 1 and 50, so this is a very beginner-friendly piece. You can grab the sheet music below. It's free, and I'll ask you to subscribe to my email list so I can send you updates whenever I make a new video or teach another piece like this. So if you're interested in learning piano pieces like this is what I do. I also write about piano literacy because it's something that I like to talk about a lot. So if I was teaching this piece, one of the very first things I would work on is getting this left hand, just a stream of 8th notes happening. And then the very first thing I really would work on is keeping all of these repeated D notes quiet. So I just think of this idea of quiet thumbs and not playing too loudly on your thumb. One of the things that commonly happens is beginners want to play the thumb very loud by just dropping the wrist and dropping the arm into the key like that. We can't do that if we're trying to keep these repeated D notes quiet. The reason we want to play this repeated note quietly is because if you have something commonly happening on a weak part of the beat, right? This is a strong part of the beat is on the downbeat, and this part where all the D's are happening is the upbeat, which we perceive as a weaker part of the beat. Now, if that D is too loud, then it gets really obnoxious to the ear. It's a nice feel when we can keep it quiet. So to play that quietly, don't drop your wrist when you play your thumb. First of all, we're going to supinate the hand a little bit, which means just rotate towards the outside to play all of these lower notes a little bit louder. So play, rotate away, and you can get that sound. Now, try not to lift your thumb off the key when you rotate, because what happens if you lift your thumb up, your thumb is really high now. Then when you go to play the D, it's going to be naturally really loud just because you're slamming it down. So try to rest your thumb on the key as you rotate a little bit. Just add a little bit of weight to the outside, roll over, and think of that weight as kind of rolling out to the outside of the hand. don't be afraid to take a lot of time to practice this, to go really loud and then play your thumb as quietly as you can. Really loud, as quietly as you can. And if you do that for a little while, you'll start to get used to it. It can be something that you speed up. Okay, we're not trying to accent necessarily the pulse of the beat. We just want it to be louder than the thumb. The first two phrases of this piece really work well together, especially if you crescendo on the first one and get softer during the second one. When you have two 4-bar measures that go together, you've got this phrase of 8 bars or 8 measures. And if you arc that whole thing, if you shape that whole thing, it sounds really lovely to the ear. So if I start quietly on the first phrase and get gradually louder and start the second phrase louder and gradually quieter, it has this nice resolution feel as you think about that. So if we're tapering the end of this phrase, ending it nice and quietly. This happens sometimes in piano music. I'm looking at measure 17, and this is when we go from piano to pianissimo. It's really difficult for pianists to do this, to pull this off. Something that happens for pianists is they want to play the dynamic piano a little too quietly, and then they don't have any room to get pianissimo, to get even quieter. And so when you see piano, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to play as quietly as you can. We really want to hear this contrast between the two little phrases that we have here. So we've got this 2 measures and this 2 measures. It's the same thing. The second one is just an echo. So what we want to hear is a shift in the dynamics. What I love about this is you can just put the una corda on, which is short for is Italian for the soft pedal, okay? It really means one string. So what you're doing is you're shifting the keys over. It's that left pedal. I'm playing it with my left foot, and you can see on my grand piano, it shifts the keyboard over. On an upright piano, what it does is it moves the hammers closer to the strings. But what I like to do is, like, anytime I see pianissimo, I just go ahead and put on the soft pedal. Why not? Okay, and you can take a little bit of time to just be extra careful and make it nice and quiet. That's my reaction anytime I see a pianissimo. It's just use the soft pedal a little bit more aggressively. I think it gets underused, so go for it. Also, don't worry too much about these 30-second notes. They just kind of happen right where you played. They're just like this offset, but we're just adding a little bit second note in there. Okay, so you just kind of riff it. It just happens pretty naturally if you just kind of let it happen. And all you need to do is aim for these 2 notes to happen together when you're playing this. Okay, I'm going to play 2 more notes and then let that happen. It can come together pretty easily, so don't get intimidated by a little 30-second note run there. Okay, so let's look at the minor section. It's really fun to mess around with this. What I like to do is take a moment to analyze the chords that I'm playing, and I've broken them down here. I've made like a little loop that I like to play. I think it's fun to improvise on this. This is slightly different order because what I'm seeing is a G minor chord here. We've got this minor third that happens here that just indicates to me it's a G minor chord. I see a D7 here, even though it's in this position. Even though there's no D here, it just sounds like a 5 chord. So we're going to call that a D7. Back to G minor. And then sort of a D7, but with a natural F natural. So it's like a D minor major 7. You could just play a regular D7 here without. If that minor major thing doesn't really jive for you, like if I play G and then this chord is kind of tricky, okay? So what I like to do is just mess around with that just to see if I like it. On the next page, there's a diminished 7th chord. And then another G minor. And then this chord, which really sounds like a secondary dominant to me. And we're trying to go to D7. And then in this chord, he doesn't give us the third of that chord. Okay, so that's my little analysis. I don't want to break that down entirely right now. So just trust, okay? Because the music theory is actually kind of boring. What I want to show you is that if you learn these chords, G minor, D7, G minor, D7. I'm just making them 3-note chords right now. G minor. Let's do E diminished 7th like this, and then maybe an A7 down here, and then a D7 again. It can be really fun to just improvise with those. Just with the 3-note chord voicings. Just loop it around. Sorry. Okay, and then when you get a little bit more creative with it, you can start inverting that triad around and expand it. Okay, so that's the kind of thing I would allow to be a pleasant distraction in my practice. I'm doing a little bit of analysis of the piece, then I take it and I just turn it into like a little lead sheet, like a little chord progression, and then play with it as much as you want. There's another section at the very end of this piece that I find is really good for practicing improvising. So if you just take the left hand, this idea of a common note that we've got through here at the bottom, just anchoring the pinky and then moving the thumb around is a great way. It's such a tremendously easy way to make improvising something easy to do because you don't have to worry too much about your left hand moving around and finding the chords. It's just anchor on one note, and that low note, we can call it a pedal point. We can call this note, because it repeats for a few measures, we'll call it a pedal point. And the idea of a pedal point comes from organ. You can imagine an organist just sticking their foot on one of the bass notes for their foot and just sustaining that for a while. It's called a pedal point because he's holding down one of the pedals. So what I'll do is take something like this. Take that left hand and drop it down an octave. Okay, just little ways to improvise, and you can play with that as much as you want, make it sound better than mine. But that's the kind of thing I like to do with pieces like this, is just take it and play with it. So don't forget to grab the sheet music. It's free. You can get it, and then join the email list. And then there's more beginner pieces. Like there's 12 of them over here, and then there's a Bergmuller piece that I think is really just very similar to this learning level. Okay, bye.